What if South Korea disappeared tomorrow? 5 major economies would face immediate crisis. Their industries would grind to a halt. Their technologies would become obsolete. And their citizens would feel the impact within days. This isn't speculation, it's economic reality. Let's discover which countries depend on South Korea far more than you ever imagined. While many people see South Korea as a small peninsula in East Asia, the truth is far more remarkable. This nation of 52 million people has become absolutely essential to the global economy. Not just important, essential. And today, we're revealing 5 countries whose economies would face devastating consequences if South Korea suddenly vanished. Before we begin, understand this. We're not talking about minor inconveniences. We're talking about supply chain collapses, technological standstills, and economic shockwaves that would affect millions of lives. The numbers we'll share aren't hypothetical, they're based on current trade data and economic dependencies that exist right now. Let's start our countdown with number 5.
Vietnam.
Vietnam's economic miracle of the past 2 decades has an untold story, and South Korea is at its center. When you walk through Ho Chi Minh City or Hanoi, you'll notice something remarkable. Samsung factories employ over 100,000 Vietnamese workers. LG production facilities span massive industrial zones. Hyundai and Kia assembly plants operate around the clock. But here's what most people don't realize. South Korea is Vietnam's largest foreign investor, with cumulative investments exceeding $80 billion. Think about that number for a moment. $80 billion flowing from a country roughly the size of Indiana into Vietnam's economy. Samsung alone produces half of its global smartphones in Vietnam. That's not a small operation, that's half of all Samsung phones in the world. If South Korea withdrew this presence, over 200,000 Vietnamese workers would lose their jobs immediately. The ripple effects would impact millions more. The relationship goes deeper than manufacturing. South Korean construction companies built Vietnam's modern infrastructure. Korean banks finance Vietnamese businesses. Korean retail chains like Lotte Mart have become part of daily life for millions of Vietnamese families. Korean cosmetics and fashion brands dominate shopping districts from Hanoi to Da Nang. And there's a cultural dimension too. K-pop and Korean dramas have created unprecedented soft power influence. Vietnamese youth study Korean language in record numbers, hoping to work for Korean companies or study in Korean universities. This cultural bridge facilitates business relationships worth billions annually. Without South Korea, Vietnam would lose its primary pathway to technological advancement and industrial modernization. The country would face immediate foreign exchange shortages, unemployment crises, and a severe slowdown in its remarkable economic growth story. Number 4. The Philippines. The Philippines maintains a relationship with South Korea that most Filipinos themselves underestimate. Walk into any Filipino household, and you'll likely find Korean technology everywhere. Samsung televisions, LG refrigerators, Hyundai cars in the driveway. But the dependency runs much deeper than consumer products. South Korea is the Philippines' 4th largest trading partner, with bilateral trade exceeding $15 billion annually. Korean companies employ hundreds of thousands of Filipino workers across manufacturing, shipbuilding, and electronic sectors. The port city of Subic Bay has transformed into a major Korean investment hub, with companies like Hanjin establishing massive shipbuilding operations. Here's something fascinating. The Philippines sends more than 15,000 workers to South Korea each year through the employment permit system. These workers send remittances back home that support entire communities. Remove this channel, and you remove a critical lifeline for thousands of Filipino families. Korean agricultural technology has revolutionized Filipino farming. Korean seed varieties, farming techniques, and agricultural machinery have increased crop yields across multiple provinces. Korean construction firms have built critical infrastructure, highways, bridges, power plants, that keep the Philippine economy moving. The cultural impact cannot be ignored. Korean language schools operate in every major Filipino city. K-dramas dominate television ratings. Korean beauty products and fashion trends shape Filipino consumer preferences. This cultural affinity creates business opportunities worth billions. But perhaps most critically, South Korea provides the Philippines with access to advanced manufacturing technology and expertise. Filipino workers trained by Korean companies gain skills that elevate the entire industrial sector. Without this knowledge transfer, the Philippines would struggle to compete in global manufacturing markets. If South Korea vanished, the Philippines would lose not just a major trading partner, but a crucial catalyst for industrial development and technological advancement. Number 3. China. Now this might surprise you. China, the world's second-largest economy, depends on South Korea more than most people realize. And we're not talking about small numbers here, we're talking about dependencies that could shake the entire Chinese industrial complex. South Korea is China's third-largest trading partner. In 2023 alone, bilateral trade exceeded $300 billion. But the real story lies beneath these numbers, in the critical components that Chinese manufacturers absolutely cannot produce themselves. Chinese tech giants like Huawei, Xiaomi, and Oppo rely heavily on Korean semiconductors and display panels. Samsung and SK Hynix provide memory chips that power everything from Chinese smartphones to data centers. LG Display and Samsung Display manufacture the screens that go into millions of Chinese devices. Here's the critical point: China cannot simply replace these Korean suppliers overnight. The technology gap in advanced semiconductors remains substantial. While China invests billions in developing domestic chip manufacturing, they're still years behind Korean capabilities in crucial areas like DRAM and NAND flash memory. The automotive sector tells an equally compelling story. Korean auto parts manufacturers supply components to virtually every major Chinese car brand. From transmissions to electronic control units, Korean engineering excellence has become embedded in China's automotive supply chain. Battery technology from Korean companies like LG Energy Solution and Samsung SDI powers the Chinese electric vehicle revolution. Even China's massive construction industry depends on Korean expertise. Korean engineering firms provide the advanced architectural designs and construction methodologies for China's most ambitious projects. Korean steel and chemical companies supply materials that Chinese manufacturers need but struggle to produce at the same quality level. The fashion and beauty industries show South Korea's consumer influence. Korean cosmetics brands generate billions in annual sales across China. Korean fashion trends set the pace for Chinese urban youth culture. Korean entertainment content attracts hundreds of millions of Chinese viewers, despite regulatory restrictions. Without South Korea, China would face immediate shortages in critical technology components. Manufacturing timelines would extend dramatically. Product quality would decline. And Chinese companies would lose their competitive edge in global markets where Korean components provide the technological advantage. The dependency flows both ways, of course. But make no mistake, if South Korea disappeared, China's industrial output would face severe disruptions that would take years to overcome. Before we reveal the top 2 countries, let's take a brief moment. If you're enjoying these insights about South Korea's global influence, consider subscribing to our channel. We upload new videos frequently, exploring different aspects of Korean excellence and global impact. Hit that subscribe button and join thousands of others discovering why South Korea matters more than you ever imagined. Number 2. United States. The United States and South Korea share one of the world's most consequential economic relationships. And while most Americans might not realize it, their daily lives depend on Korean innovation in profound ways. Start with semiconductors. In an era where chips power everything from smartphones to military systems, South Korea controls critical parts of the supply chain. Samsung and SK Hynix produce approximately 40% of the world's memory chips. American tech giants, Apple, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, all rely on Korean semiconductors to power their products and services. Imagine Apple trying to manufacture iPhones without Samsung's display technology and memory chips. Imagine Google's data centers operating without SK Hynix's server memory. Imagine Amazon's cloud services running without Korean semiconductor technology. These scenarios aren't just difficult, they're essentially impossible with current technology. The automotive transformation happening in America right now depends heavily on Korean innovation. Electric vehicle batteries from Korean manufacturers power American cars and trucks. Battery plants built by Korean companies on American soil employ thousands of American workers and represent billions in investment. Without Korean battery technology, America's electric vehicle revolution would stall immediately. Korean shipbuilding expertise built many of the cargo ships that carry American goods across oceans. Korean construction companies have built critical American infrastructure. Korean appliance manufacturers provide products that millions of American families use daily. Walk into any American home, and you'll likely find Korean technology: televisions, refrigerators, washing machines, air conditioners. But the relationship goes beyond products. South Korea serves as America's crucial geopolitical ally in Asia. Korean military cooperation, intelligence sharing, and strategic positioning provide security benefits worth far more than any trade numbers. The alliance enables American strategic interests across the entire Pacific region. American companies also depend on the Korean market. Korea is the sixth largest export destination for American goods. American agriculture, aerospace, and technology companies generate tens of billions in annual revenue from Korean consumers. Remove this market, and thousands of American jobs would disappear. The technology partnership between Silicon Valley and Korean companies drives innovation on both sides. Joint research initiatives, technology licensing agreements, and collaborative development projects push the boundaries of what's possible in semiconductors, displays, batteries, and artificial intelligence. Cultural exchange adds another dimension. Korean students fill American universities, bringing academic excellence and diversity to campus life. Korean professionals work in American companies, contributing expertise and innovation. The flow of talent and ideas enriches both nations. Without South Korea, the United States would face critical shortages in semiconductor supplies, forcing American tech companies to scramble for alternatives that don't exist at the same quality level. The electric vehicle transition would slow dramatically. Consumer electronics prices would spike. And America would lose its most reliable ally in a strategically vital region. The dependency is real, substantial, and growing stronger every year. Number 1. Japan. Here's the most surprising entry on our list. Japan, the world's third largest economy and a technological powerhouse in its own right, depends on South Korea in ways that would shock most Japanese citizens. The relationship is complex, sometimes contentious, but economically inseparable. And the numbers tell a story that political tensions cannot erase. South Korea supplies Japan with critical components that Japanese manufacturers need but cannot efficiently produce themselves. Despite Japan's manufacturing prowess, Korean companies have achieved technological leadership in specific areas that Japanese industry requires. Display technology provides a perfect example. Japanese electronics brands like Sony use Korean display panels in their premium televisions. Why? Because Samsung Display and LG Display have achieved quality levels that Japanese manufacturers struggle to match at competitive prices. The irony isn't lost on industry observers. Japanese brands dependent on Korean display technology to compete globally. Semiconductor manufacturing shows similar patterns. Japanese companies rely on Korean memory chips for their products. While Japan excels in certain semiconductor equipment and materials, Korea dominates memory chip production with superior scale and efficiency. Japanese electronics manufacturers, automotive companies, and industrial equipment producers all depend on this Korean semiconductor supply. The automotive industry reveals even deeper connections. Korean steel manufacturers supply high-grade materials that Japanese automakers use in vehicle production. Korean battery technology increasingly powers Japanese hybrid and electric vehicles. Korean automotive parts manufacturers have become integrated into Japanese supply chains in ways that would be extremely difficult to unwind. Chemical and materials industries show mutual dependency. Korean chemical companies supply materials that Japanese manufacturers need for electronics, automotive, and industrial production. The relationships have developed over decades, with quality standards and specifications built around Korean suppliers. Tourism tells another story. Before recent geopolitical challenges, millions of Korean tourists visited Japan annually, spending billions of yen in Japanese hotels, restaurants, and shops. Japanese tourism industry revenues depended heavily on Korean visitors, particularly in cities like Osaka, Fukuoka, and Tokyo. The cultural and business ties run deep despite historical tensions. Japanese companies have invested heavily in Korea, and Korean companies have invested substantially in Japan. Supply chains intertwine in complex ways that make simple separation nearly impossible. Here's what makes Japan's dependency most significant. Japan's aging population and declining workforce create labor shortages that Korean partnerships help address. Korean companies operating in Japan provide employment and economic activity that Japanese regions desperately need. Korean investment in Japanese businesses and real estate provides capital that aging Japanese companies require. Without South Korea, Japan would face immediate disruptions in electronics manufacturing, automotive production, and chemical supplies. Japanese brands would lose access to critical display technology and semiconductor components. Tourism revenues would decline substantially. And Japan would lose a vital economic partner whose geographic proximity and industrial capabilities provide advantages that distant alternatives cannot match. The relationship between Japan and South Korea demonstrates a profound truth: economic interdependence transcends historical grievances and political disagreements. The two economies have become so intertwined that separation would harm both nations severely. We've journeyed through 5 countries whose economies depend on South Korea in fundamental ways. From Vietnam's manufacturing miracle to Japan's technological needs, from the Philippines' industrial development to China's component dependencies, from America's semiconductor reliance to partnerships that span the globe, South Korea's influence is undeniable. This small peninsula has become an economic giant, a technological powerhouse, an essential node in global supply chains, a cultural phenomenon that shapes preferences and trends worldwide. The next time someone questions South Korea's global importance, remember these 5 countries. Remember the hundreds of billions in trade. Remember the millions of jobs. Remember the technologies that power our modern world. Remember the innovations that drive progress across industries. South Korea isn't just participating in the global economy. South Korea is making the global economy possible. And these 5 countries prove it beyond any doubt.